House in Baltimore, and Ron there, Ron. We're going to be doing a little viewing party for games 3 and 4 next week. You'll want to be into that. Also brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at every single thing they do. Branches throughout Baltimore and Maryland, also presenting our Thursday charity and community series, also brought to you by Cole Roofing. We'll hear from Billy Cole a little later on in the week. The NFL draft now getting closer and closer as we inch toward the 16th spot on the clock. And, of course, we did the Liars Luncheon last week out at Owings Mills. I keep running in this guy, whether it's Super Bowls and combines and owners' meetings. He's covered the National Football League as well as sports all over the place, from ESPN many moons ago and Sports Illustrated, now to the NFL Network. I'm still trying to pronounce his last name, even though I've always read his work and loved his work. He's now at NFL.com as a senior columnist and NFL Network on-air talent. We welcome Chef Chadiha onto the program, and I'm glad I had a primer on how to pronounce your last name, because I would have gotten it wrong many moons. I think I ran into you a million years ago doing Oriole baseball back in Fort Lauderdale, but you've been on the NFL beat and doing stories here, and I know as we get up onto the draft, so much of the network dedicated to this, I find myself really having draftitis this year. I want to learn about every player because my team needs help here, Jeff, in Baltimore. How you doing, man?
Yeah. I'm doing well, man. How are you doing? That's a heck of a lead-in, man. That's about as good as it gets right now.
Well, we need help around here, and I don't know that this draft from a wide receiver or tight end perspective at 16, that's the ideal place to be. We've all looked at Ridley, and we've heard that, and certainly the big tackle from Notre Dame, McGlinchey's been the guy who's been mocked to the Ravens the most. But the one thing we know about the draft is the quarterback's rule, and whether there's 3 or 4 or 5 off the board, it's going to affect everything about the first round.
That's true. That's what makes this offseason so fascinating. You know, I think it's hard to imagine a year, and I've been doing this for the last 25 years, if you can believe it, where you've had so many quarterbacks dominate the landscape of an offseason, going through, free agency up to the draft, leading up to the draft, just the amount of quarterbacks that are available. And you're right. It's just we're in an era where we know we're going to go through a big quarterback turnover. I go back to the into the 1990s, early 2000s, when we lost John Elway and Jim Kelly and Dan Marino. All those guys were retiring, Troy Aikman, and there was this big void. And all of a sudden, the Baltimore Ravens show up and win a championship with Trent Dilfer, which kind of proved the whole point of that void. I think we're going through the same thing now. We're getting to the point where we're about to lose the Tom Brady's and the Ben Roethlisberger's and Eli Manning's. There's so many big-name quarterbacks, so many quarterbacks have come in and played well early in the last few years that this crop has got a lot of excitement surrounding it.
Well, and this offseason was with the musical chairs of, where's Cousins going to land? What's going to happen to Case Keenum? But lo and behold, we finally have that next name, Nick Foles, Super Bowl MVP and champion. No one would have thought that. And look, we had cabin fever around here last week when RG3 shows up in purple, and the Ravens fans I'm like, he's a backup quarterback. If he has to play, you can't win. But you can't say that anymore, right? I mean, that's no longer an eligible statement to say, well, it doesn't matter who your backup is. It mattered a lot in Philadelphia, I'll tell you that.
Well, it did, and I really believe that Nick Foles changed the game, not so much in terms of Nick Foles, because I think people knew he was a solid quarterback, not a great quarterback, not as great as he played in those playoffs, but certainly a competent quarterback. But he definitely proved that if you can coach a guy up, you can get a lot out of him. And so now you're right. It just this whole question of RG3 comes up now. Johnny Manziel's working out to get back into the league. Where does Nick Foles go from here? Look at what Case Keenum did. So I think it used to just be about, can you get the next Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, that franchise quarterback? Well, now it's a whole new market that's opened up. Can you get a guy who may have been undervalued or underperforming, get him into the right situation, and get 11 or 12 wins out of him as Case Keenum proved you could do with him. Nobody was talking about him a year ago when he signed that deal, but now he's in Denver, and I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there who are thinking they can just find the next, pot of gold with a guy like that.
Jeff, you've used a lot of words there, and I circled one you used on Foles, and I'll throw this back at you. You called him a competent backup quarterback. How many backup quarterbacks are competent, right? Like, competent to the level that they can win 3 games in January. It's interesting, he wins, and we'll say competent, and we'll give him whatever plaudits, and certainly the post-game speech that he gave was, that Sam Farmer put on the refrigerator that famously went around the world. But competent is there. How many competent... I'll tell you what, Ryan Mallett did not look competent around here as a backup last year.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Clearly, Brock Osweiler wasn't competent, or as competent as we thought he was when he got a chance to actually start. And that's the big thing. I'm a Nick Foles fan. I like what he did. I live in Kansas City, so I'd seen him before. I like his personality, the way he approaches the game, the ups and downs of it. But if you're telling me that he's going to be worth spending draft picks on to acquire him, or to give him a chance to be a franchise quarterback, he's going to be successful and do what he did in those 2 games for the rest of his career, no, I don't see that happening.
Jeff Chadiha. Jeff Chadiha covers the NFL as well as anyone. You can follow him out on Twitter at Jeffri Chadiha. That's JEFFRI CHADIHA. And, of course, out at NFL.com as well. Colin Kaepernick, he's a competent quarterback, right?
Yep. Another name out there that's keeping the whole quarterback excitement going. I do think he's competent, and I do believe that he deserves a chance to play in the NFL. But I also understand why he's not playing. And when people talk about this topic, it's always a little bit frustrating because they kind of conflate some stuff and they mix up some facts, and it becomes an issue of he deserves a chance, so he's getting a scoop because he's not getting a chance. I believe that when you do what he did, and I respect what he did, and I admire it, and I'm always impressed with people who are willing to put their careers, their lives on the line for what they believe, you have to understand there's going to be some blowback. And what I've always felt about Colin is that his timing couldn't have been worse in that regard, because if Jim Harbaugh was the head coach somewhere in the NFL right now, I think he'd have a shot. If Trent Baalke, the GM who drafted him, was a GM somewhere, I think he'd have a shot. If any of the coaches who had him after that, Chip Kelly, I forget the guy's name, he was there for 1 year, Jim Tomsula, if he had a job somewhere, I know that his offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, was an offensive coordinator, but you need somebody to go to bat for you.
Well, I think that happened here. Jeff, that happened in Baltimore last year. Bisciotti said he was going to prey on it. People took that the wrong way. I think he meant that he was going to sleep on it, think it through, because he has put himself in a position where the team that takes him on takes on a lot. And look, we had 30,000 empty seats here at every game last year. We had Ray Rice here. We had Ray Lewis and Jamal Lewis before that in jumpsuits around here. And I think Steve's kind of wrung out on a lot of it. And certainly the girlfriend tweeting the nonsense with Ray Lewis later on made him toxic here. But this was one of 3 or 4 places last summer where he might have gotten a job here. I mean, they were legitimately talking about it, thinking about it. John had talked to his brother. This was a landing spot for him last year.
It was. And look, I think that I give them all the credit for the role for even taking the chance and having to deal with all the fires they had to put out in the aftermath of that. I know there was a lot of people who were up in arms about it not happening. And I get that side of it. I'm a black man in America. I understand what he's trying to do, but I also understand how that can be alarming for people who don't get what he's doing. And it's tough for a team to say, this is our backup quarterback. Do we really want to deal with this with our backup quarterback? And I'll put this out there as well, which I think hadn't discussed enough. I don't so much believe it's all about what he did, but I think the way he went about doing it in terms of how ownership would view it. Because the biggest mistake he made in doing what he did, he never went and told his owners he was going to do it. And so you're sitting there as another owner thinking, no matter what this guy says, he's a wild card. Like, these guys make money based off what they can control, what they can predict. And if you're sitting there, you're looking at Jed York in San Francisco and saying, this guy just went on national TV and made a big statement about what he believes, and you're the owner, you got to sit there and try to explain it or make sense of it. You have no idea where he's coming from, and you got to play catch-up now. That's a bad a bad place to be in for an owner. That's the toughest part about this for any of these guys who want to hire him.
Jeff Chadiha is our guest here. It is all brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast, tasty coffee, the best fried chicken in the land. Make sure you're downloading the Rofo app and using that when you're gassing up. You'll save some dough on those Western fries as well as the fried chicken. Also brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. Fremont Mortgage underwriting and sponsoring all of our swabbings for There Goes My Hero, including our event with head coach Barry Trotz of the Washington Capitals last week. We're going to be out on the road doing a little viewing party for Game 3 and 4 next week as we get ready for the draft and the NFL schedule. Jeff Chadiha is our guest. He is out in Kansas City. I know Luke Jones, our intrepid Ravens reporter, is looking forward to the barbecue out there. We're going to play a game out there in Kansas City this year. And, nowhere have they made more waves. And I guess the first wave of all of this started out in Minnesota with the Alex Smith and the Washington Redskins and where Cousins is going to wind up. The train got a roll in there, and certainly that started with draft day last year with Mahomes. Kansas City, total new direction. Are they going to be an improved team this year, Jeff?
I'm not sure about that. That's a really good question. If you ask people around here, they would tell you that they're really excited about the Patrick Mahomes era starting, the offense really getting ramped up. They made a number of moves in the offseason. Adding Sammy Watkins was a big deal. You look at what they have around him in terms of Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt. He has as good array of weapons around him as any quarterback in the NFL. But the defense is still horrible, and they haven't done enough to fix the defense. And I don't know if they can get to the playoffs with a defense that was 28th in the NFL and has continued to be ripped apart in the playoffs. So they were 10-6 last year, won the AFC West. I don't think they do either one of those this year. I think it's more like 8-8, 9-7, and hopefully they can compete for a wild card spot.
Well, the rich have gotten richer. We've watched the Rams and the Eagles here in the offseason. We all know the Browns are going to win the draft, right, Jeff? I mean, they can't help but win the draft, right?
They do that better than anybody else. They got more picks, so they should be able to win the draft.
Are they ever going to get better?
I believe that with John Dorsey there, that they've got a pretty good chance. And I say it because whatever they were doing the last couple of years with this Moneyball, operation, it was like a think tank over there, the first think tank in the NFL, where they were just doing all kinds of experimental things to try to rebuild a team. At some point, you need somebody in the office who knows how to pick players. And I've watched John Dorsey in Kansas City up close. Watched him rebuild a team that was 2-14, and he made some pretty smart moves. He was able to find some players to take a chance on that hit big. People look at Marcus Peters now with the Rams and Travis Kelce, what he's become, best tight end in football. Tyreek Hill, probably the most explosive player in football right now. And all three of those guys came in with huge red flags around him, all kinds of issues, all kinds of baggage, and he went 3 for 3 in that department. So he's pretty good at finding players. I would imagine that if I had to pick what he's going to do, he's going to take a quarterback at 1, but if Saquon Barkley is there at 4, which he probably will be there, given how the Giants and Jets are looking right now. That's a pretty good start to a new era. So, he cleaned house, got rid of a lot of players. He's going to find the best players he can, and I think they'll be better.
Interesting how this time of the year, all of our perceptions start to turn on whether it's quarterbacks or guys moving up the board or down the board. We're hearing here at Maryland, DJ Moore, obviously the wide receiver. There's interest here in a wide receiver as well as on the offensive line. Orlando Brown Jr., I know you're working on a piece on him. I've been pen-paling with him a little bit. Obviously his background in Baltimore with his dad and the tragedy involving his dad and his death a number of years ago now. And Zeus Jr. sort of taking this legacy forward. He did himself no favors in Indianapolis at the Combine. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but certainly a guy the Ravens would be looking at and a guy that, Ozzie Newsome remembers as a baby.
Yes, and that goes a long way when you're picking a player. Like, how well do you know, sort of the background, the people around him, the way he conducts himself. And, yes, he didn't have a great Combine performance, but, he was solid at the pro day when I was there talking to people about him. What I kept hearing was nobody expected him to go into the Combine and blow it up. And so, yes, even though he didn't impress people with his athletic ability, most people going in there looked at him as a player who his upside comes down to his size, his pedigree, his work ethic, his will to be better. And so, I mean, you're talking about a 6'8", 340-pound man, who did give up a sack on one of the best teams in college football last year. That says something about his talent level. So whether he's a first-round pick or a second-round pick, I imagine that the team that takes him will look at the fact that he's still growing into his body. He's 21 years old. There's a lot of room to go. And this kid pretty much made himself into an All-American player in like 3 years in Oklahoma.
He's a pleasure to be around, isn't he? I mean, his dad was certainly rough around the edges and growing up in D.C. and stuff. He's almost bookish compared to his dad. His dad would be awfully proud of him, really.
Yeah, he told me a great story about when he was younger, started to play football, and his dad didn't want him to play until he was in high school because he felt like he didn't do that until he was in high school, and he saw NFL players who played a lot when they were younger getting hurt. And, I think once the kid decided to play, was allowed to play, Zeus was always on him about being tougher and more physical and would leave his games. I mean, he felt like he was being too soft. And so you're talking about a really nice kid, as a very intelligent kid. He, even though he had grade problems when he was in high school, you meet him, the first thing you sense is he's a very smart kid. He's a very quick-witted kid. He could do what you and I do. He could be a broadcaster pretty naturally.
No doubt.
And so I think that those smarts, I think he's learning how to play the game, and I think his dad, even though his dad died young, I think he taught him a lot about the importance of being tough and being physical, and the kid really wants to live up to that legacy.
For what you've done in profiling people and telling stories, the draft, certainly from what you're doing now at the NFL Network, allows you to go talk to a million. I mean, we got a guy with one arm trying to get in this league, and he's going to make it. I mean, there are just stories everywhere, whether it's at Darnold or Rosen and all the Kardashian drama about who likes him and who doesn't and who's going to lead and who's not, and what kind of guy Baker Mayfield is, all that kind of stuff. But there are stories year in and year out in this league that a guy like you likes to sink your teeth into and go get to know someone, right?
That's right. And I always laugh when people talk about what this time of year is like for me, and I always tell them it's busier. It's more hectic because everybody's got a chance. Everybody has time to look at the information and imagine what could happen. And you get to the season, and it's great to dream, but those dreams can be dashed pretty fast in a week or two. You start seeing guys get hurt, and you start to see what you really have on the field. This time of year is all about what could be, and you're right. There's so many great stories. There's so many kids that are coming. There's just so many more programs that are producing kids. It used to be 20 years ago, you were only talking about Big Ten or Pac-12 or SEC, and now it's like you look at kids from Shaquem Griffin from Central Florida. You're looking at small school kids. You're trying to figure out what they can become. I play football at Wyoming. I look at Josh Allen, where he's come from in his life and what he's doing now, being a potential top 3 pick. It's pretty impressive. It's more about the opportunities these kids are getting in college and what they're doing with them, and that creates a lot of these stories we're talking about.
Wouldn't that be something? Kid from Wyoming, number 1 pick. I mean, that is your background. That would be a hell of a story, right?
Oh, it would be. I was sitting there watching the pro day on TV a couple of weeks ago, his pro day, and I was just blown away because when I was at Wyoming, we had a pretty good receiver there. It was a friend of mine, a guy named Ryan Yarborough, who was an All-American and I think a second-round pick for the Jets when he came out in '94.
He played 10 minutes in Baltimore. He had a little cup of coffee with the Ravens. I remember Ryan. Good kid.
That's right. In fact, I think his dad's from Baltimore. Played with Bill Rhoden from the New York Times at one of the local schools there, one of the black schools there. But he definitely, Josh Allen, watching him and watching the hordes following him, the crowd that showed up to see him perform. I was like, man, this program has gotten pretty big time. And I know it meant a lot to have the Mike Mayock's there and the all the GMs, all the coaches, all the ESPN camera crews. So when you're doing what he's doing, and you're a kid who nobody wanted to come out of high school, but to go to JUCO and only get 2 offers from there, and then 2 years later you might be the second or the first pick in the draft, that's a hell of a run.
Well, we'll be watching the next couple of weeks. Any thoughts on the Ravens and where they are in this mix to try to get better? You could say, well, they came a 4th and 12 from going to the playoffs. The ball went over their head. Fine. The other part of that is who are they throwing the ball to? And where are you on Crabtree as an example? I mean, that's a hell of a pickup for the Ravens if it works out well and he catches 85 balls here next year.
Yeah, both their receivers, Crabtree and then John Brown, they're interesting players because they've had their moments. They've shown some potential. Crabtree has never been what they thought he was going to be when he was a top 5 pick coming out when he came out. But he's 30 years old now. He was good for the Raiders. He's a solid player. They will be better at the position. What's tougher for me in trying to predict where the Ravens go is that they're always going to be great when they've got great defense. They haven't been great on defense. While they've been good, not great. Not the level of the Ray Lewis era, those guys, the 2000 team, even the 2012 team. They're not at that level. So when they're not that great, it's hard to really get, 11, 12 wins out of them. And I think you have to be looking at New England's always going to be there. Pittsburgh's going to be there with what they have. But there's a whole group of young quarterbacks coming up here, man, that really makes it interesting. From Deshaun Watson in Houston to Andrew Luck comes back in Indy to Marcus Mariota in Tennessee to Mahomes in Kansas City. So I start looking at some of these gunslingers going around. And if you don't have a lot of offense in this league right now, it's going to be hard to win games. So that's what makes it tough for me to really get excited about them. But they're always going to be well coached. They're always going to have, talent. It's just a question of can they score enough points to compete with these other teams.
Ozzy's last go at the rodeo here, last full-time draft. We'll see if he can find us another Ray Lewis or an Ed Reed or John Ogden. Our bar's not too high here, Jeff, right?
Well, I'll tell you what. I would hope that, and we just saw Bill Pulling go in the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. I would hope that Ozzie Newsome gets a lot of discussion for that because I look at his. Obviously, he's a great player, but I look at what he's done with that franchise and having 2 Super Bowl championships under his belt, and being competitive and doing the things he's done. He's been as good a GM as this league's ever seen, so I hope that he gets credit for that as well.
Dude, send me some cheesy corn and some Crown tips from over there at Jack Stack out in Kansas City. Hold the barbecue for us. The schedule's coming out next week. Whenever we're in Kansas City, we're going to extend it so we can eat more and have some more fun.
I like the sound of that, man.
Jeff, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for the time. Appreciate you visiting with us here, and we'll be watching you out at NFL Network.
No problem, man. Take care of yourself, and thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll be looking for that Orlando Brown Jr. piece. Also doing a piece on Stedman Bailey out at NFL.com. You can follow his work out on Twitter as well at Jeff Chadiha. That's Chadiha, and I just learned how to pronounce it, so I am embarrassed because I've been reading his work for the better part of 2 decades as well as at E60 on ESPN now with NFL Network. But I go back to Sports Illustrated as well. Jeff Chadiha, Chadiha out on Twitter. Go find him. You can find me in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's always $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Lunk alarm, always judgment-free. It is PlanetFitness.com. Don't forget our morning newspaper also includes the Laurel entries for the weekend. They got the big Pick 6 rainbow thing happening there. Almost $300,000 now in the pot for Laurel this weekend. The entries out at WNST.net as well as a part of our morning newspaper. If you got kids this weekend, take them down to the Modell Lyric to see the Wild Kratts, the 4:30 show. Still some tickets available for that great PBS educational series. Your kids will know all about it. Just say Wild Kratts, Modell Lyric this week. They are our partners. Britt Floyd doing the music of Pink Floyd on the 26th. That is draft night, as well as Jackson Brown on May 3rd. Kansas, Steely Dan, all coming to the Modell Lyric. They are our partner. Always great. We talk about Hall of Fame. Got the word Modell in it. I like it already. The Baltimore Brigade begins play indoors at the Rofo Arena on Friday night against the Washington Valor. You can learn more and get your tickets at BaltimoreBrigade.com, as well as download that Monumental Sports app, and you can watch the Brigade games. I'm sporting my Brigade hat to support the Baltimore Brigade all week long. They are also sponsoring WNST. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And if there's any breaking news, the Orioles have been sending pitchers up and down. If the Ravens do any dealing back and forth or sign any more players, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home, getting you ready for the weekend. It is the SSV on WNST. We had a spirited WrestleMania debate here earlier in the week as well. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.